Last time, I asked 97 people for their ranks across 13 games to see if skill transfers between games, and we found some interesting things. But this time, that number grew to 1,000 submissions, and let me tell you, some correlations got stronger, others got weaker. But there were some that made no sense. It might completely break your assumptions. Quick recap for anyone new. I created a survey asking for people's peak rank across 13 of the most popular esport games across varying genres. Then I converted every rank into a percentile score from 0 to 1, 0 being the worst player, 1 being the best. That data becomes a correlation heat map, which shows how likely your rank in one game correlates with another. But with only 97 people, that's barely a sample size. So I left the survey open, and people kept submitting. We hit 1,000 submissions, which should be amazing, right? More data, better results. Except I ran into a massive problem. Every single submission was text-based. With 97 people submitting an average of 4 games each, that was about 400 text entries I could manually convert to numbers, which is doable. But 1,000 submissions times 4 games is roughly 4,000 text entries that I'd have to turn into numbers, and I already spent 6 hours doing the first 97. So I had to somehow compress this process. Here's what I did. Instead of keeping every individual rank, like Silver 1, Silver 2, Silver 3, Silver 4, and Silver 5, I chunked them by tier, so now it's just Silver. Same for Gold, same for Platinum. I even compressed the top ranks. Instead of Masters, Grandmaster, and Challenger being separate, I turned them all into Masters Plus. Now here's the thing, normally compressing data like this would be terrible for accuracy, but we're measuring correlation, not absolute skill. And someone in Masters versus someone in Challenger, that's maybe a 2 to 3% difference in percentile. It barely moves the needle in the correlation data, so chunking actually made sense here. This cut down the processing time significantly. The second optimization was filtering. If I could select a batch of entries with the same rank, I could apply the same number to all of them at once. I could filter every single submission that included some variation of Silver and apply the same number to them all. It became much more manageable. But then I ran into the real problem: human error. When you create a survey where people type their ranks freely, you don't just get Gold 3 or Diamond 2, you get some real creative people. Let me show you some of the actual submissions. Obviously, some are just for fun, but others were completely impossible to verify. Like, there's no bronze rank in Counter-Strike, so I don't know what's going on. I ended up having to manually review about 100 submissions that the automated process couldn't handle. And honestly, that taught me more about how people think than the actual data did. But after all the cleaning, filtering, and manual corrections, here's what the data showed. Now, at first glance, it doesn't look that impressive. Nothing really seems to stand out. But that's because I used the previous method of calculating the correlation, which included non-submitted games as the average value. But since I had more submissions this time, I could do a pairwise deletion, which basically only compares data when a user has both ranks. So now when we look at the new heat map, it looks like this. And right away, we see some weird things going on, like Fortnite and Dota 2, or StarCraft 2 and Street Fighter 6 having strong correlation. So there's a quick adjustment that we have to do, which is to only show correlation that have more than 50 pairs. Now we have the cleanest version of this graph. Overwatch 2 and Marvel Rivals have the highest correlation out of all pairs, unsurprisingly. Many of the FPS games have relatively high correlation between each other, which is not surprising. But then we see something interesting. Street Fighter and League of Legends, and Street Fighter and Overwatch 2 have moderate correlation. Same with chess and TFT, as well as chess and Marvel Rivals. This could be random noise, but it's super interesting considering that Doublelift and Tyler1, who are League of Legends players, are surprisingly good in Street Fighter. Now, one thing I should mention is that yes, none of these correlations have a value above 0.7, and a stat nerd could suggest it's not significant enough. But since we are comparing entirely unique video games with its own set of rules, instead of something simpler like reaction time or an aim test, a modest correlation can still represent substantial shared variance given high task heterogeneity. If we also look at the graph as a whole, we see that there is practically no negative correlation, which means that there is, in theory, no context in which the higher your rank in one game correlates with your rank becoming lower in another. But then again, this might be happening because of the design of the survey, which only collects peak rank. Anyways, let's go look at some other stats. The most common number of ranks submitted was 4 games, but the majority lied in the 2 to 5 range, which isn't a surprise, but there was one interesting exception. There was just one guy that had a rank for 12 games. But let's look at other stats. This is the distribution of the difference between a player's highest rank and lowest rank. A lower spread suggests a player is more of a generalist as their ranks don't really fluctuate. But a large spread suggests a player is more of a specialist as their best rank and worst rank has a wide gap. Looking at this, it feels pretty split down the middle, like there is a clear 50-50 population of specialists and generalists. I think it's very validating to see that many generalists as a reflection of human behavior. But let's move on to something exciting. I know that many people wish to see more competitive games than just the 13 on the survey. So I created a website where users can select their ranks on a drop-down across 30 plus games, along with a selection of hours. The site then shows you what rank you could be in other games by pure frequency, so it will be user driven. The hours will show what are the common ranks within each hour bracket. This way, I no longer have to manually process text into data. Also, I'm kind of sick of this topic and I kinda want to move on, or come back whenever in the future. Also, feel free to join my Discord I just created. If you want to talk wacky things and push new ideas like this, you are welcome to the crew.